Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ms. Saloni, Assistant Professor, IIMT College of Law, Greater Noida. Today, we are about to discuss on topic law and morality. This subject is particularly related to the subject of jurisprudence. Coming to the context, first we will discuss the topic of law. In this, we will discuss what is law. So, according to the Black's Law Dictionary, it says that law is a body of rules of action or conduct prescribed by a controlling authority and having binding legal force, which must be obeyed and followed by citizens, subject to sanctions or legal consequences. So, in general parlance, we would say that law is a set of rules or a conduct that is prescribed by a controlling authority. There is a superior authority which controls such conduct and such rules, and such rules and conduct have a binding force which must be obeyed and followed by the citizens, subject to the consequences of such law. In simple words, law is a bunch of rules and regulations formed by the authority, that is legislature, and enforced by the executive body, which has legal sanctity and which the citizens are obliged to follow in order to avoid the legal consequences. Coming next, before we proceed to the relation of law and morality, we will discuss what is law and morality. So, secondly, morality, in simple words, is the principles, values, beliefs, and behavior created and carried forward by the society. So, many times there is no law, but there is a morality, which means that it is a set of rules that is created by the society, and it is carried forward by the every generation. Coming to the morality, they do not have legal sanctity, but bind the person to societal obligation or are dependent upon the conscience of the individual. For example, going to the temple and praying to God is morality, but is not a legal sanction. So, morality is something that comes from within, that is consciousness. Hence, many of the legislations are devoid of morality, while there is also much legislation which, along with law, has morality as the base element. Example, live-in relationships is legal, but is not a consensus with morality, whereas the law against human trafficking has morality as its elements. So, with a very easy example, as illustrated in this PPT, live-in relationships are legal. The Supreme Court of India, or the Honorable Supreme Court of India, has declared that it is not a crime to live in a relationship where the two persons are not married and are simple cohabitating with each other. But it is very contrary to the morality. The Indian society will not accept such relationships. It continues to the present time that there are many cases where the living relationships have been opposed. They have not been given home. They are denied access to many facilities that are easily available to all the citizens of India. So, living relationship is legal, but is not in consensus with the morality. Whereas law against human trafficking has a morality in its element. It is very essential to stop the human trafficking because it connects with the morality, with the consciousness of an individual. Next, law and morality in jurisprudence. So we will discuss that why we are studying law and morality in the subject of jurisprudence. Law and morals are the subject which govern the behavior of individual in society. Basically, we as humans are largely concerned with the law. We do certain things and abstain from doing certain things as per the fear of the law. If we know that certain acts are prohibited or certain acts, there is a punishment prescribed in the law, we will not do it. So, laws are rules and regulations which are sanctioned by the authority and are compulsory to follow. While morals are the standards of behavior that individuals should follow in order to live peacefully with acceptability, but they are not compulsory like law. These two concepts have a complex relationship which has evolved over a time. In ancient times, law and morality was seen as a similar concept, but with time and development, it has clarified that these two are different but interdependent concepts. If we go back in the history, law and morality have been synonymous to each other. People used to follow the customs, similarly like law. And earlier there was no concept of laws and offenses. There were customs, traditions, usages. So it is rightly said that earlier they were very similar concepts, but with time, as the jurisprudence developed, as the courts of the nation dealt with many cases, they got profound and draw a very thin line between the two concepts. So we clearly know that laws are something that bind a person, that are compulsory to follow. But morality is something that comes with it, and no person is bound by the morality. So number one, if we discuss the relationship between law and morality, it is generally divided. This relationship is based upon three major factors. Discussing number one, moral as the origin of law. As I have said in the earlier PPT, that earlier there was no concept of law. There was morality, there was consciousness, there was reason, there was natural law, and there was the jurists emphasized upon the distinction to be made between right and wrong. Hence, in ancient times, there was no clear distinction between law and morality. And due to this lack of distinction, the origin of every law was found in the principles which people thought as morally correct. In the end, the state selected those correct practices and made them into laws, thus forming similarities between law and morality. For example, it is morally wrong to commit theft or robbery. The state gave this moral a form of law. Even though the distinction between law and morals have been put forth, but morality forms an integral part of the law. Most of the laws have some or the other principles of morality. So earlier there was no concept of law. There was morality. People were aware of the right and wrong, and they used to do such as only which are not prohibited or which are right, and negate the ones which were wrong. So earlier, if we go to the history of law and the history of the acts which were declared as law later on, if we say that theft is always a crime. Taking things that are in possession of another person is always wrong. This was simply an act, but with time, this was given a form of law. Even though the distinction of law and morality have been put forth, but morals still continue to form a basis of law. Many laws are based on the factor that morality says it as wrong. Morality declares it as wrong. Hence, such thing should be declared as an offense in the eye of law. Second, moral as the test of law. Many jurists are of the opinion that those laws which do not follow morality must be removed. As the end purpose of every law is to impart justice and ensure the welfare of the people. So, while making any law, it is always been seen that whether it is in consonance with moral values or not, if it doesn't follow the moral standards, it should be removed. So it is emphasized in this second point that if there is some law, it should be based on the morality. If morality declares any act as wrong, the law should be made against that action. So because the end purpose of every law is to impart justice and to secure the security and the welfare of the people. So if according to the morality, it has been declared that certain acts are wrong. It is the duty of the legislators to make a law on such thing and provide welfare and equality and ensure justice to the people. Third, morality as the end of the law. Laws were made to serve the purpose of creating a society having the elements of fairness, justice, and equality. Laws were made for the purpose of providing justice to the person who suffered from something wrong. So we have discussed that the end purpose of law is to provide fairness, justice, welfare, equality to the people. If laws are made for the purpose that is in consonance with such qualities, then such law will be declared as a valid one. Otherwise, no one will accept a law that is filled with arbitrariness, that do not help an individual, that create biasness towards an individual. No one, not even a single person will accept a law that is against him. Similarly, if there is a concept of fairness, justice, and equality in any law, it will be a good law in the eye of every person. On the other hand, morality provided certain standards to certain some order in society with fewer conflicts. In other words, the object of morality is to remove conflicts from society. Thus, we can see that the main object of law and morality is same, making both the concepts related to each other. So we have discussed that law is something that provides fairness, equality, justice, welfare to the people. Similarly, the motive of morality is to remove conflicts from the society, is to reduce the chaos, is to encourage people to distinguish between right and wrong. Hence, the object of law and morality is same, but their nature is very different. Law is binding, morality is not. Law is applied by the state, but morality is something that cannot be necessarily applied by the state. After we have discussed their ultimate goal, law and morality have a very common goal. Only their nature is very different. So, difference between law and morality. Our next topic is this. In this, we will discuss how, despite the fact that in earlier times, both these terms were synonyms to each other, and with the development of jurisprudence, they parted their ways. They became a distinct words and have a distinct meaning. So, although we can see law and morality in some aspects as interdependent and also identical concepts, but there are some factors which differentiate these two. Number one, it is the external source from which the law is obtained. In simple words, law is derived from the rules and regulations, whereas morality is there from the individual's inner self, internal source, that is the individual mind of a person. So I have emphasized again and again that law is something that have an external force. Law is made by the legislature. Law is made by the people who are sitting outside and consider few acts to be legal and other acts to be not legal. But whereas morality is something that comes from within, that is a topic of inner consciousness. If a person begins to behave as per his morality, he will conclude that few things are universally wrong and few things are universally right. He will continue start doing the things which are universally right or which is right according to him. Hence, morality is something that comes from the within, but law is an external force that is encouraged to bring peace in the society. Ultimately, the ultimate motive of law and morality is same, that is welfare of the people and introduction of justice into the society. Coming to the second difference, laws are focused upon the individual's conduct for which it interests certain standards, whereas morality is concerned with the innate values of the conduct. In other words, it is focused upon the motive. So laws are focused upon the individual conduct. If you do something wrong, there is a law to punish you for this. There are certain standards, there are certain principles which are need to be followed. But in morality, there are innate values. There are no certain principles. Morality is something that is relative. I might consider something as right, and other person need not necessarily need to recognize that thing as right. He might consider such thing as wrong. So law is an external force again that is based on the individual conduct, and morality is something that is an inner feeling. Third, laws does not change from person to person. It treats everyone the same, whereas morality is a subjective concept. It differs for every person based on their conscience. So law is same for everyone. In India, there is an Indian Penal Code. All the offences prescribed under such code is applied equally to every person. It is not that theft is wrong for one person and it is not wrong for another person. Theft is considered as an offense, and whosoever commits such offense will be punished. So law is same for everyone, whereas morality is a subjective concept. It differs for every person based on their conscience. Morality, I might consider going to temple as right. The other person might not consider it as right thing. I might consider theft as right, but other person will label that as is at wrong act. So morality is a subjective concept. It differs for every person based on their conscience. How their conscience answers to doing such an act, that is something morality. So laws are influenced by morality because earlier there was no concept of law, but there was a concept of morality. And morality formed the basis of law. Hence, which means they were created by taking morals into consideration. Morality, on the other hand, existed way before the laws were formed. So morality is not a new concept. All the jurists, all the thinkers, if we take the natural school of law, it emphasized on the fact of reason. It says that law is nothing but it is based on reason. Reason is the ability to question what is right and wrong. There has been a thinker named Alpian who quoted that law is nothing but the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. Hence, morality is a very old concept, but law is a new concept emerged out of morality after the development of jurisprudence and the various Supreme Court or any other court judgment. Fifth, there is a punishment for the disobedience of law, but in morality, there is no such punishment for anything done which is wrong morally. So, it is very clear that if anything that is against law will be punished. But in morality, if there is a person in the sea and he is drowning, you may or may not save him. But because this is morality, one should save such person, but he is not obliged to do so. But when it comes to law, law is something that a person must do something and must abstain from doing something. So there is a punishment for the disobedience of law, but there is no punishment in the case of morality. Laws are mandatory to be followed as laid down by the sovereign for the people governed by it. So again, I emphasize that laws are something that are external. It is given by the sovereign authority who is governing the people. However, morality is rather a personal concept. It doesn't lay down certain mandatory conduct have to be followed. So morality is a personal concept. Only a person who is considering morality needs to follow it. It is not to be followed by everyone. It is not given by some external authority. Hence, coming to the seventh point, law control the behavior of a person legally, whereas morals control the behavior of a person morally. So, law is something that is governed by the external authority. Hence, the external authority or the sovereign authority controls the behavior of the person in a legal manner, but not on the basis of morals. Whereas morals control the behavior of a person on the basis of morality, on the basis of what is right and wrong. Coming to the very famous and leading case of jurisprudence as well as Indian Penal Code, there has been a famous case of Dudley versus Stephens case. In this case, the principles of law and morality were discussed while punishing the great offense of cannibalism. According to the facts of the case, the accused were the seamen. Their ship capsized in the storm. They, along with a boy about 17 years of age, managed to float on a wooden plank. They continued to drift for many days without food and drinking water. When the death of starvation and thirst was imminent, they killed a boy and continued to eat his flesh for a few days until they were rescued. On being prosecuted for murder, they pleaded that self-preservation was the utmost necessity and they had no option except to kill the boy. So here, the principles of law and morality was this, distinguished. See, in this case, it is illegal offense to kill a person, but morality says to save yourself, to save to save everyone together with you. In this case, it has been discussed, largely discussed, that law and morality, there is something wrong in killing someone, but the morality says to save oneself. Hence, they pleaded the self-preservation, that they needed to preserve themselves. They needed to preserve their body. They needed to survive. Hence, they killed the child who was much more weaker than them, who was weak and who was gullible. Hence, they killed in order to preserve themselves. But they were later charged with the offense of murder. Continued law and morality difference. Number one, law is regulated by external forces, as we have discussed that law is regulated by rules and regulations. Morality regulated by internal forces, by the conscience of a person. Second, law is the same for everyone. Morality is a subjective concept that can be different for different people. Third, there is a set punishment for the violation of laws. There is no punishment for an immoral act but a guilt feeling. The laws are enforced by the state. Morality is regulated by the people of the society. Fifth, laws are influenced by morality. It has emerged before the law. The laws control the actions of a person legally, but whereas morality controls the act of a person morally. Seven, laws made by the legislature are strict. Moral values do not have any force to obey such rules and regulations. So, coming to this, we'll discuss that what we have read till now.